regardless of how people are working, the same things all matter, that we value that sense of connection. I think the only thing that may change, depending on if we're hybrid or remote or in person, is maybe your intention behind it. So if we're going to have hybrid workplaces and we're going to have people dispersed as well, it's being intentional with how we're connecting with them. So are we making sure that, we're picking up the phone and just having conversations?
You're listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Louie Prosperi. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I'm Louie Prosperi. Our guest is the VP of HR at Payworks, Jennifer Johnston. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Louie. Thank you so much for having me today.
We are very excited to have you here, Jennifer. We'd also like to know a little bit about Payworks. And on top of that, I'd also like to know your start and your humble beginnings as well.
Oh, great. Gosh, it's always tough when you have to talk about yourself, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how I'm fortunate enough now to be here at Payworks. I've been with Payworks for just over 16 months. And prior to that, I worked in some larger organizations, a global organization, and I spent a lot of time having fun around the area of talent management. And some folks might ask, what's talent management? Is it another HR lingo kind of word that way? Yeah. But talent management is really looking at talent and how we're guiding our organizations on talent. So things like engagement, employee experience, talent, and succession planning. So I've had a lot of fun doing that over the years. And I think I ended up in HR when I was doing my MBA. I did a focus in executive leadership and strategic HR. And I think recognizing the impact that HR can have on organizations and creating great workplaces for people to come and have good careers is something that excites me. So I found my passion here. I've been in the HR space now for, I consider, a good amount of time.
So you're not going to tell us how many years. Fair enough. I get it. That's good.
It's all on LinkedIn. Anyone can see it. Yeah.
Fair enough.
And I mean, Payworks specifically was very interested about Payworks. I'm here in Winnipeg. Payworks is a well-regarded organization, especially here in Winnipeg, for all of the community work and doing. So I always knew of Payworks and the culture that it had and that community aspect to it. And then I think what excited about me being an HR person is it's pretty cool when you're an HR person that gets to come and work in an HR technology company. So I feel that all stars align there, and I've been having a great time here so far.
Well, that's great. To be quite honest, one of the things that I want to go right into right away is something that employers are really looking at, are really grappling in today's environment, right? Because this is after COVID, although there might be a little bit of a COVID bump coming up soon, but it's technically after COVID. Mm-hmm. And we had the complete remote, we have the hybrid, and now we have people going into the office. What are you seeing basically from your perspective of employers and how they're adapting to these three different environments?
Yeah, great question. Spend a lot of time thinking about this, talking about it, with friends, talking about it around our management table. COVID created lots of challenges for organizations. And then, some silver lining things that did come out of, a lot of challenging in a very tough thing was ways that we have embraced remote work. And, there was a lot in the early days and still now about how, people were having more time at home and balance. And what's interesting lately is how it seems like on the daily, Louie, I can read something different in the news or in the article about Are we productive
Yes.
at home? Are we not productive at home?
Right.
We're more stressed now than we were before? Flexibility, organizations are saying, no, we can stay at home. Organizations are saying, no, come back. So it
Right.
can almost
Right.
make your head spin. And
Yeah.
so I think one of the things that to try to get perspective and bring it down to, okay, what do we know? What things, do we want to control? Is really spending some time identifying what matters to you as a business or an organization. Is it that you value, flexibility, and that people can, be at different work arrangements in different times? What does your business say? Or do you value connection? And does connection to you mean face to face? And
Right.
I think if, regardless of, organization or business, if you first kind of spend some time as identifying what are the most critical things that are important to you as a brand, and then start talking to your employees. Okay, so if we're going to say it's really important to us that we have certain, I like to refer to them as moments that matter. So, strategy meetings, one-on-ones, performance conversations, team building. If we say, okay, there's a handful of moments that matter that we always want to make sure we're together in person for. And so let's kind of put those out there and defining some structure around that, and then going out and talking to your employees, what matters to you, what's going to help make your day busier. We do things like engagement surveys, exit interviews, roundtables with employees. We've been doing that with some of our new hires to just say, okay, if these are the things that are critical for us as a business and our employees are hearing this, then maybe somewhere within all of this, we can come up with a framework of what work, what a flexible work environment, what the future of work might look like.
That's interesting because you hit on a bunch of key topics. Is that COVID made us have to be remote,
Yeah.
right? So we were remote for a year and a half, or whatever it was, and then we did this hybrid. And now you're absolutely right. I'm totally confused too. By the way, Jennifer, with all of the information coming out, is hybrid more productive? Is remote more productive?
Yeah.
Is the office better face to face? And I kind of agree with you. There is no right answer anymore, right? It's you. I think you hit it right on the head. It's the perspective of the company,
Yeah.
of what they want to
Mm-hmm.
enable, right? And then see how those three different things impact. So that's very interesting. So let's take them step by step. So one of the things you said is employee engagement experience, and I guess let's take a look at employment engagement experience. What does that mean, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
and how does that interact with the type of work, whether it's hybrid? I know this is a very long question, but you can split it up.
No.
And if you forget a part of it, let me know. Hybrid, remote, or in office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So employee experience and employee engagement are similar,
Right.
but also a tiny bit, different in how, you might want to look at it. So employee engagement is, hey, how are your employees feeling at work? And do they feel that they can say good things about your company, that they're going to stay with your company, and that they're willing to kind of put in that effort to kind of, be for the collective good of an organization. So I think understanding, those three aspects are important in engagement. And then once you understand your engagements, like, okay, well, what sort of things does this engaged group expect from an organization? And what does an organization expect from that? And then how can you create an experience around it? So this is so timely as well, because we just finished our annual employee engagement survey. So I'm excited that the team and I were well into, data and analytics and looking at things that employees are telling us for feedback. And so
Great.
we use a lot of this data, and we will be to help better understand what our employees are thinking in terms of work. And similar to all other organizations, we're also trying to figure out, the path, as I just mentioned, to what does that look like. So we're able to use some of the information out of our surveys to kind of look at, how are people finding their work, and do they have meaning in the work that they do? Are there things that we could be doing within their experience to get better?
Okay, so since you've brought up your survey,
Yes.
has it been published yet, or is it being published?
It hasn't been published yet. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to ask for what are the little? Is there any little tidbits that you could give us as a prelude to the survey that might be interesting? Like, let's say you say, "Oh wow, something popped up and that was interesting, which wasn't expected," or
Yeah.
it could highlight a trend.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think we're going to be pretty excited and proud of the scores that we have. I think one thing coming out, and you asked me about, what does employee engagement or employee experience mean? Leaders and leadership drives a lot of that.
Okay.
And one thing that, we're seeing as strengths coming out of our survey is around our leadership integrity, and leadership availability. So we're seeing that kind of come out as a strength. And I think that kind of speaks to the volumes for, our leaders in the culture. And the other thing I think we're going to be proud of as we start talking about it is this was the first year we've looked at an employee net promoter score. And so not only do we have an engagement.
Sorry, Jennifer, could you explain that a little bit? What is an employer net promoter? Because I don't even know what that is. What is that?
Yeah. So thank you for asking. So a lot of organizations do net promoter scores to kind of get the rating to say, okay, do people who use our services, are they willing to recommend them?
Right.
And so one of the things the provider that we used for the engagement survey had for this year was to create an employee net promoter score to basically say, are you recommending Payworks, to your friends or to your colleagues as a great place to work? So this was our first time doing such a score. And we looked at some kind of benchmarking from other organizations. So we looked at Culture Amp and a few others, and they had kind of an average of around 27 as a net promoter score.
Is that good or bad? Sorry, I need to know.
Yeah, well,
what's a good score?
Ours, so they would say on average 27 would be a good score. I kind of,
good.
I feel like you could do better.
Right.
I'm always, and then they did say for organizations that would be best in class would be anything like 50 or higher. And so we're really excited that we'll be, closer. Our employees are telling us that we are in the best in class area, not to kind of share specifically.
Not to brag.
Yeah, not to brag. But that's not to say like we're very proud of that. And I think that's thanks to the leadership and to employees that have been with us. But that also means that there are still things that we can work on. We also use the engagement survey to kind of understand what are, nuggets of feedback and advice that we can be working on. So can we be spending some more time on role clarity, for example, or coaching and development and showing that there are career paths? So I always say, regardless of where your score is, there's always great ways to keep building on your strength and to see, what are things that are bubbling up for people. And I would say based on what we're seeing in our engagement score, it's very similar out in the market. So a lot of the things that I'm reading, through Gartner, through Mercer and McKinsey and some of kind of those top kind of thought leadership areas is it's all around right now, diversity, equity, inclusion, focusing on culture, looking at well-being, which I'm sure maybe we'll talk about a little bit around, health and wellness and resilience. How are we going to be working together? And then enabling in organizations like around skills and training. So I feel like the things that we're seeing and the feedback that we got is very aligned, I think, to what globally or across Canada too, that they're saying are coming out as priorities for organizations.
Well, I think you hit one of them, well-being, because in today's environment, whether particularly, and I'm going from a perspective from the professional side, accountants and bookkeepers and our firms, it's a very stressful work environment. And not that we want it that way, it's just because it's deadline based, right? Customer service based. Like customer comes in, usually they have a problem, we got to resolve it. Now, I'm pretty sure that's not just our industry, that other industries are there. So let's if you could look at the stressful component and tie it into the well-being, how do you do that? Like what things would you recommend in there for the well-being or life work balance?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, doesn't that seem to be we hear all the time, work-life balance, WLB. I think there was previous things around what other words I heard, work-life harmony. There are lots of things.
However you want to call it.
Gosh, yeah, it's such a big and important topic, and can definitely appreciate with bookkeepers and accountants as well, the stress on those deadlines, similar for, our folks who are processing payroll, it has to be processed by a certain date. And
Makes sense. Yeah.
absolutely. And it feels lately that it's a common theme. You said it perfectly, Louie. Like, it may not just be this area, but it does seem to be. We are spending a lot of time reading and hearing about stress and burnout and all of those things. So I think it's super important. Ways that, we've started looking at it here. We actually created a health and wellness specialist role just to have someone dedicated to kind of looking at that for us. And appreciate that not, every organization or company will have that. But some of the things that we're looking at is around workloads and capacity and creating
Right.
space in the day. And I think that's very individual. One of the things, or a few of the things we've done on our HR team is we would have vacation time. Let me present the background here. So we go on vacation. And I don't know if you've ever felt like this, Louie. You're going for vacation. You're trying to get everything done before you go so that you can, if you can see me, I'm throwing my arms up here so that we can, get out and enjoy ourselves. We're trying to get everything done. And then
Well, not only everything done, Jennifer, to be quite honest, you try to get it done for the week that you're off as well, right? Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you come back, and maybe you committed to yourself or your family very well, and you haven't looked at your phone or your email, but you come back and it's like, oh my gosh, I have all these emails, and you're right into meetings and other things. And so one of the things that we've actually tried out is blocking the day before and after your vacation. So technically no one knows you're here, but you are there. And that gives you that day to hopefully create some space, get organized, not feel like, it's, 5:00 on the day before vacation and you're, trying to send those last minute emails. And then when you come back, hoping that it resisted the urge for folks to be checking their emails on vacation, because you have that day to come back and check in on emails, prepare for the week. And so we tried that out over the summer.
Yeah.
I think it worked fairly well. So far from the team. And the other thing that we've done, and I wouldn't say that this is a new practice. I had an incredible leader earlier in my career who was very big on, work-life balance, before it was cool.
Okay.
And one of the things that she had and we implemented was no meeting Friday afternoons. And so everyone's calendars across were blocked in the afternoons. And that was used for a bunch of things: to catch up on the week, to prioritize for next week, maybe to go have coffee chats with people that you hadn't yet. Maybe it's getting to the gym or booking a massage or doing, like, there was no pressure. It wasn't like an afternoon off, but it was to create that calendar space. And to be honest, I probably kept that. I'm using that here in Payworks. I used it in my previous organization. So it's probably been with me now for close to 10 years. And it's something that we're kind of using here. Again, this may not work in every department. So like a service department, or if, you have clients calling, your accountant or bookkeeper, you might, have customers calling in and having to provide some support. But whatever that looks like to you, is it a Friday afternoon? Is it blocking a Monday morning? Is it, framing out your calendar? So just trying to create some of that space.
I really like that. Actually, to be quite honest, I like both of your ideas. I'm going to repeat them because I think people should make notes here on this section here. One is, so the day before you go on vacation and the day you come back, they aren't necessarily days off, but they're do not disturb days for you, so that you either get your stuff in order, and which I really like. And I honestly, I agree with you. So certain jobs don't allow this, but in the professional industry they do, in a lot of management positions they do. I think that's a brilliant idea. It's not an extra day off. We should make that note.
Make that note.
It's not you're adding 2 days to this person's off. It's literally what happens is on the Thursday before the Friday they go on vacation, they got that time to make sure everything's organized and no disruptions. And the day back, they're not as stressed, because now what they're going to do is they're going to go through their inbox, they're going to go through the stuff, and nothing's going to happen. So I honestly, that alone was brilliant. I love that part. And you're right, it might not work. And the other one is perfect. that Friday afternoon, I do that myself. I have my Fridays. I know today's Friday, but technically on my Fridays, I don't book anything.
Yeah.
I leave it open for things like things that might happen or whatever. So I don't do exactly nothing, but
Yeah.
I leave it open so that, if things pop up or if there's one or two items, so that leaves the rest of the day to actually catch up or whatever. Now, I agree with you. If it's not a Friday, it could be a Tuesday morning, whatever.
Mhm.
But that's really good. I think that's a great way to help almost immediately implement for stress,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I didn't realize you're exactly right, Louie. It's not perfect. I don't obviously do that. I'm not able to do that 100% of the time. You also have to have flexibility, considering that it's Friday afternoon here and we're having this conversation.
Yeah,
So
that's right. So, like, it's not written in stone, right,
not
Jennifer?
written in stone. I don't beat
Okay.
myself up on it, but by having that though, I
Yeah,
also have time that can, really enjoy connection like this and getting to chat about kind of,
yeah,
topics and things like that. So yeah, it's making sure again, it's almost like creating that proactive space so that you have it. Not always
yeah.
perfect, but it's just small little things. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book Atomic Habits. I really like that. And it was kind of those small changes, like small incremental changes that can lead to bigger impacts. And so I personally try to find ways to do that when I can.
Yeah, and I think I don't think I read that book. I think I had it on audio, and I used it when I was exercising. Now, by the way, Jennifer, I'm not exercising way back when. I don't exercise as much as I should now. So just it's not a morning thing like I used to be. But anyway, we digress.
We digress.
Let's go back to your thing. Let's look at the hybrid environment,
Mhm.
because technically, I think that's the new in thing. It's either right now what's happening is not 100% remote. I think that's disappearing. It's not completely disappeared, but unless you live 3 hours away from the office, they're requiring you to do a hybrid of some sort.
Mhm.
And the other one is in office. We'll focus on the hybrid environment. How do you implement that in a way that makes it successful and satisfies both management,
Mhm.
right, their needs, and the staff person? How if you can bring any tips or anything, any insight, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, just similar to, earlier things that we were talking about. This is very much top of mind. And there's a couple of pieces. So I'll just start throwing some things out and we'll see where
Sure.
the conversation goes. And so I mentioned one of the global organizations that I worked for before. I actually had my team was across the world. So I was working on a remote team. So
Right.
there are things where I think lots of organizations have been doing this for quite some time that we can learn from and have been efficient and effective and productive, right? But there's practices that are put in place for this. And so I think now if we fast forward to today, there's a couple things that come to mind. One is during COVID, what happened for organizations is that kind of talent opened up, right? Because we could hire folks because we were working remote in all different
Yes.
locations. So, we weren't having to be, hiring just for Winnipeg. We were, hiring roles in Nova Scotia and, across Canada. That has happened for organizations. That has happened for us. So remote and hybrid cannot go away because we've hired people in our teams. For example, one of my senior talent acquisition specialists who is brilliant at recruitment, she's in Calgary. And so I will forever now have a hybrid team. And so trying
Yeah.
to find ways to work on that. So I think there are things that organizations, because of hiring and that may have happened, that we're going to have to figure out how to make it work. But to your point, so what does this look like for kind of going forward? It's a couple of pieces. It's going back to, okay, what as an organization is important to us? And so, here at Payworks, we value connection. And so we're spending some time though trying to define, what is it about connection? It's not, connection being on meetings and everyone's on Zoom in the office. It's,
Right.
connection on being together for team building, being together
Yeah.
to go out, for lunch. It's being together for strategy, for one-on-one meetings. So I kind of mentioned like identifying what's important to you. So we said connection is important. And so we want to identify those moments that matter, that help us center around connection. And then it's going back to the employees to say, well, what does this look like from you? A lot of research papers, so again, kind of coming out of Mercer and Corn Ferry, and there's a lot on the changing employee expectations that employees are driving the need for flexibility, for wanting to work from home. And it almost seems to be like it's a difficult time for employers and employees to say, okay, what's really going to work going forward?
Right.
So I think going back to meeting with your employees, trying to understand what is it about flexibility, and then coming up with what's important from the employer side. Is it connection? Is it, making sure that we can be effective in team meetings and things like that? And then trying to figure out where does it go for? And then I was actually talking with one of the women on the team earlier before this call. We were talking about kind of remote work, hybrid work, in office work. And we were chatting and I said, well, I think it's all similar. Regardless of how people are working, the same things all matter, that we value that sense of connection. I think the only thing that may change, depending on if we're hybrid or remote or in person, is maybe our intention behind it. So if we're going to have hybrid workplaces and we're going to have people dispersed as well, it's being intentional with how we're connecting with them. So are we making sure that, we're picking up the phone and just having conversations?
So honestly, a light bulb I know you can't see it here, but a light bulb just went on because Jennifer, the intention part is right on the nose, because when you're in office, you don't have to be intentional to connect. You're literally either sitting right beside the person, or the door is there. Well, most small offices aren't that big. It's not like you got to go down 20 miles to find someone, right? You know what I mean? But I'm talking about a normal small office. So intention, you don't have to worry about intention, because if you need to see someone, and for management, the old management where we were all in office, it was almost instinctual. The interconnectivity that you're talking about is there, and we don't have to build a system in place.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think when you set up a hybrid or remote, you have to actually set up the intentional connection, right? You have to then change the culture so that they really focus on, we still want to connect, interact, but now we have to make it on purpose. And how do we do that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge in today's hybrid environment or remote. Is that correct?
I agree.
To in office. Does that make sense? Am I on the right page?
No, it makes complete sense. And it's interesting, like, whether you said it so eloquently and nicely, and it phrased it, the way that it's phrased up, it almost makes it sound like it's simple. But I liked how you said at the end, but actually that's the big challenge. It sounds simple. It's connection and being intentional and doing these things. But as in organizations, I get it. I can appreciate it. It is a challenge. So what does that look like? Is it technology? Is it making sure that you've got the right technology in it? Is it making sure that you've got the right leadership training, to have good conversations and, implementing new norms and different, team building things. And there's so much.
Well, you just triggered another light bulb. So just leadership is also, because you mentioned that's one of the big things in your survey. And I think leadership with these different types of environments or culture, which is a hybrid or remote or office, the leadership has to drive it. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
They have to drive how the hybrid system is going to work, right? So if your leadership isn't driving it, it's going to cause difficulty. I'm giving you questions because I'm not sure. I'm guessing here at this point. Jennifer, does that make sense? Is that correct?
Absolutely. And gosh, for all those who are, leading themselves or leading organizations or teams, leading is hard, and it's hard right now. And I think it's important just to kind of say that out loud. As a leader, people have gone through probably some of the most challenging years that they may have had. So, we're working through, personal things and challenges. And then we're also having to lead and support people who have also been going through that. So we need to be showing up and guiding and supporting those individuals, or, if you've got customers that are calling in that have gone through challenging. And it's not surprising that a lot of, especially middle managers, there's a lot of, stress and burnout. And so, I mean, it kind of goes back to a little bit on, health and wellness, and balance and all of that. Is it's as leaders as well, finding that space and taking care of yourself. And I think that's something, at Payworks that's really important to us, and for our leaders. And next week, we're bringing all of our leaders together in for some a leadership summit, and we're doing some training in that. Of course, we're doing some fun events, and we're also spending some time with them on the third day talking about resilience and health and wellness. And
Right.
I think that's important, when again, I'm saying the same words again, but creating that space and then, bringing in hopefully a few things that may help. Leaders, as to your point, play a huge role. They're critical. Leaders are driving engagement. They're creating positive workplaces. They're the ones that are talking with the employees. They're answering the questions. They're, creating that culture, molding that culture. So their role is absolutely key. They're integral to so much in any organization. And there's a lot going on for them.
So before we go on to the part that I want to talk about next is, so basically for a hybrid or a remote, for let's say a leader that's been used to in office.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a leader for remote many years, and I've done some hybrid. So when I'm in office, I don't have but I know a lot of people prior to COVID, their entire leadership model was based in office. Yeah. And I guess the thing that leaders should look at is not to apply their in-office leadership style to remote and hybrid and to learn the new methods. Does that make sense? Is that something they should be looking at to improve?
Again, it kind of goes back to intention,
Right.
And that's,
Yeah.
I think you have to do a lot more when you have hybrid employees, remote employees. So I said for myself, there's a person on my team that's located out in Calgary, and
Right.
the rest of the team is here in Winnipeg. And for the most part, I would say on 3 or 4 days of the week, the majority, they're all here. And so, I have to make deliberate reminders, putting things in my calendar. We all have our regular one-on-one meetings and things like that, but, checking in at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, making sure, there's milestones, and just, again, intentional and having that in there, and making sure as well that I don't unconsciously or unknowingly, not include someone in the same way. So it's how do you do a team building event if one person's here? How do you create, we order in lunch, how do you make that the same? So, and that goes back, it's so hard as a leader, you're wrestling all these things all the time. During COVID, I had the opportunity to be on a global committee with some industry leaders, my prior organization. And it was a company in the Netherlands. And what I really liked that they did is they actually did leader training on how to talk over Zoom. Now, I'm sure we've had so much more experience with this now, but I was like, oh, okay, tell me a little bit more about that. And they said, because you can't necessarily repeat exactly how you do meetings in the office. You can't just kind of pick that up and kind of make that the exact same when you're on camera. So they did body language. So, making sure you're looking in the camera, and not and it sounds simplistic, but they said that actually helped. And so they were giving leader training on how to show up, with more of the nonverbal cues over camera.
Yeah. That's perfect. By the way, I get what you're saying about that, and let's talk about the positives of what's happened to you, because you actually have that dilemma where and this is an interesting concept because I've seen it in other firms where 40, 50, 60, or 90% of their employees are in office. They have the one or two that they hired out of office, mm-hmm. right? Let's talk about the benefit of that remote person to the team. How is that? Because people think that, what I'm going to say is the impression is, it's not the reality, but the impression is that you could get that remote person would be better if they were in office, but you wouldn't be able to get that skill set, right? Let's talk about that a little bit, that if you do what we're suggesting or what you're suggesting with the intention and retraining yourself to have a hybrid or a remote component, how does that benefit the firm? Like, for example, for your personal experience, this individual that's not in your office, how would that have been? Would you have been able to capture that person there? It would have been much more difficult to bring it in office.
Yeah, no, great question. And you're exactly right there. There were some positive things that, us in organizations that we've kind of learned that has made us stronger. And so I think with COVID, it kind of took a bit of those, boundaries down and walls down that just kind of opened up the talent pool. And of course, for someone in HR from a talent acquisition lens, this is great for us, right? Because
Right.
that pond just got, a heck of a lot bigger. And so, and what that also allows, like when we think to, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, DEIB, it allows us to be bringing in more diverse talent into organizations that maybe necessarily we might not have found in that location.
Right.
And it also, I think that remote individual can really tell a lot about a team and help influence with feedback and that because they're observing in a bit different of an angle. So, regularly checking like, how did that land in the meeting? What did you observe from that? And so, just kind of checking in. And the one individual on our team, they're actually relocating to another province for part of the year. And so they're going to be working out of one of our other offices. And I was just speaking with her and I said, I'm so interested once you get there, if is there any different kind of feeling or what you learn? And so I'm pretty excited. It's almost like a little bit of an experiment too. I'm super proud for
Yeah.
her. But I'm excited to kind of learn from, is there anything that, she might see that, hey, we're stronger this way or that we could be doing differently?
Well, you just hit another one. So you don't lose people either if they change addresses
Mm-hmm.
compared to in-house, right? If they were, and we're not even talking about changing address from very far. Because most people after they get to 45 minutes to an hour drive into the office,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to lose them most likely, right? So
Yeah.
here, this person's moving to another province and they're still working with you.
Yeah.
Right? That's actually a really cool thing. I think we could keep going on and on, Jennifer. I've got. I think this is a great thing. What I want to do now is, what does Payworks do? Like, with all of the stuff we're talking about, I know Payworks is a great company with regards to payroll and so forth, but you've added so many other components to your service that helps organizations be able to take care of the other components that we just talked about. If you just go into a little bit about that, because when I noticed all the different things you do, I thought that was very unique and well-rounded beyond payroll services.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And like I said, that was, my excitement about joining Payworks was because they are, an HR technology company. So absolutely, payroll is one of our modules. We also have a time and attendance module, an absence management module, and then we do have HR and analytics modules. And so taking off the Payworks hat and putting on as an HR, the head of HR, those are the modules that I use a lot and the team uses. So not only, that's our company, we're actually users of it as well, right? And
Right.
so the analytics is really good as well. I'm a big fan of dashboards. So being able to see, kind of how headcount is trending, how turnover is trending, and other measures like that. So those are things that are important to me as an HR professional and that I get to have access to quite easily here. And I had some great training from a few folks at Payworks when I started too that walked me through everything. So I'm still learning all of the pieces because there's so much in there. But those would be the two that for myself I use quite frequently.
Well, yeah, and I did look at some of the other things where the talent acquisition, the onboarding, you have some of those things as
Yes.
well, which for most small businesses, and this goes for accounting firms and bookkeeping firms where the average is 5 to 10 employees. The most painful part is the hiring process, making sure that, because it's very time consuming nowadays, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed that you have some of those things as well, right? You can help people through that process as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So we ourselves are users of our applicant tracking. So that's the system, that's the module that we use for all of our posting and for bringing in resumes and screenings. It's very handy.
Great.
It's all in one place. It also, when you post, it puts it out onto job boards. So it kind of helps check some boxes for you so that you're not having to, pay to go post other
Yes.
places and things that way.
Yes.
I think that's very useful. And then in our HR module, there are the employee checklists and the onboarding features that once you're bringing someone in, it allows you to go through all of those steps, because as we all know, yes, there are lots of forms that people have to fill out for, taxes and all of those aspects. So the employee checklist and the onboarding support is very handy in those modules. And the team uses those. Obviously, we've been hiring lots. We've been growing here at Payworks. So lots going on there.
Fantastic. And I just want to confirm, you're nationwide, right? From all the provinces, you cover all the provinces, you cover all the regulations and all of that stuff.
Absolutely.
All across Canada. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was exciting. I think it was shortly after I started, we hired our first employee out in Newfoundland. So we can now, we've got most areas covered now.
Fantastic. Well, Jennifer, this was great. I really enjoyed our talk. You brought in a lot of I would say unique and insightful information, both from an expert perspective and also a user perspective, and all the things that you've gone through. So I want to thank you for your time and insight.
Oh gosh, no, thank you, Louie, and I'm glad that it was. I hope that it was.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you again.
That wraps another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with Louie Prosperi. For more information and to access the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening and have a great week.